Buenas tardes, good afternoon. Welcome to ¿Qué pasa mujer? Bienvenidos a ¿Qué pasa mujer? Estamos aquí todos los domingos a las 4 de la tarde. We're here every Sunday at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So it's myself, Viviana, and also Maddie Garcia and Nikde. We miss Nikde because she hasn't been with us in a couple of weeks, but she'll come back next week, hopefully. We want to say thank you to Pot TV for allowing us to have this space to discuss our topics. ¿Qué pasa mujer is, we've been doing this for about 2 years and some change. ¿Qué pasa mujer is like what's up or what's going on woman. But we talk about several topics. We're not limited to just Latin topics. We've talked about finances, family, today, we're going to talk about colorism. We had that topic a couple of weeks ago, but we're going to do an extension today. But we've had male guests as well on our show. So we don't discriminate against your gender either. So everyone is welcome. And our awesome producer, Mark, who makes this absolutely happen every Sunday at 4 o'clock, right on the dot. So we're going to go ahead and get started. It's just Maddie and I here today. And we're going to talk about some stuff that's happening in the world, but we'll also give you guys some topics that we're going to discuss today. Maddie, ¿cómo estás?
Buenas tardes, ¿qué pasa, mujer? Estamos bien. Bienvenidos. Welcome. One day at a time. Mm-hmm. And we're here.
Yeah. So before we get started with our topic today, tragedy happens sometimes. Life happens, people die, people are born, businesses are created, businesses go into bankruptcy. So it's just life, right? And this past week, we had a tragedy happen in Santo Domingo. I'm not sure if you guys heard of it, but it was a club where the roof kind of just came down. I don't know the numbers in reference to how many people died, but it was something that has affected the country, and it has affected people that are connected to the country and other countries as well. Maddie's going to speak a little bit more about it, and then I'll have a comment after you're done, Maddie, because I know you're Dominican as well, but it affects all of us as human beings.
Of course. So yes, as you said, it was a very well-known nightclub that the roof collapsed, and yes, the death toll is over 220 plus. There were, hundreds of injured as well, and then a lot of people that have never been found. So yes, needless to say, the country is mourning right now. They have declared a national state of mourning right now. So if this happened on the 7th, so if you are in the DR right now, the entire country is at a standstill for for 6 days after the event happened. So también quiero tomar la oportunidad para dar el mensaje en español. Queremos pagar nuestros respetos a mi país, República Dominicana, por la tragedia que acaba de pasar el día 7 de abril, el 8 de abril, donde murieron más de 220 personas, hubieron muchos heridos y el país ahora mismo está pasando por un dolor y queríamos extender nuestro pésame a la República y a todos los ciudadanos dominicanos. Antes de comenzar el show, gracias Viviana por darme la oportunidad. Si no le molesta, quisiera rendir por lo menos 30 segundos de silencio para las personas que hemos perdido, y después quiero leer algo que quiero dedicar a todas las personas que están pasando por ese dolor en este momento.
You want to say it in English?
So I wrote a little something in Spanish that I want to share with everyone, but before we do anything else, I want to extend, maybe 30 seconds of silence, in honor of all the lost lives. Thank you so much. Gracias. El día 8 de abril, el colapso de una discoteca en República Dominicana se convirtió en una de las catástrofes no naturales con mayor número de muertes en la historia del país, dejando una pronunciada cicatriz en el centro de una nación que en medio de lágrimas y dolor ha quedado de rodillas pidiendo explicación, tratando de poner nombre a esta aflicción exasperadamente que nos roba el control, la rabia que exige una razón, mientras la pena parece restringir con sus manos los latidos pulsantes del corazón. Un vacío que nos invade y lágrimas que fluyen por doquier, el suelo arena movediza que inmoviliza y desespera a la vez, porque desde el ojo de la tormenta solo se ve destrucción y entre los escombros se nubla la visión que nos impide ver más allá de este dolor. Pero si algo nos ha de quedar claro, es la fuerza que nos define como nación, que nos corre por las venas, que nos hace la excepción. La fe que nos levanta de nuestras rodillas y nos llena de esperanzas, pues aún hay mucho más por qué vivir, para no repetir los errores del pasado, vivir para que los que ya no están jamás sean olvidados, vivir para honrar sus memorias y su legado, vivir como un pueblo unido, siempre orgullosos de ser dominicanos.
Thank you, Maddie. So, when I heard the news that this was happening, I have a really good friend that's Dominican, and she watches our show. Nikaudi, she's also Dominican. And one of the things that she mentioned was that, there were people there from other countries as well. And there was this one particular Colombian lady, and she expressed how she had never experienced the community really coming together. Like, and I don't want to say it's just to Dominicans, but just in time of tragedy, the people from the island came together and they checked on everybody. Like, everybody checked on everybody, and she just felt that it was something extremely unique in reference to not asking, are you Dominican, or just the fact that you were going through. And I think that's the human piece that we don't get to experience at times, because we have become selfish people or whatever. But I think really, this is a great example of humanity and how overall people are good people, and we want to do well, and we do good things. So I do want to highlight that about our community, and just as human beings as well, that we do come together. And we've had many examples, and we truly can come together during a difficult time, to be able to overcome. And because I was telling my friend, this is such a tragic event, not just for the people that passed away, but the people that were hurt, for the owners of the club. It's going to be hard if they get investigated and something's happening. Like, it's just a loss for so many people in such different capacities. I know there were celebrities in the club as well, that passed away. So it's tragic all the way around. So it's unfortunate, but
Yeah, like you said, there were a lot of people from other countries too. There was, like you said, there was a Colombian lady. There were about a few Venezuelan citizens that were in there as well. Like you said, several celebrities, but it was beautiful to see how people are coming together. I know Puerto Rico sent firefighters to help with the efforts in locating survivors. So not only the community there, but also outside of the U.S. as well, have been there or tried to be there, for the community as a whole. So
yeah, I think that's outstanding. And it kind of, the topic that we're handling today is colorism within our community. And it's almost, this is an example of when colorism doesn't exist, and that's one of the things that we're going to talk about. Colorism is when we have prejudgment on people's color within the same race. So let's say Maddie and myself are both Latina, Hispanic, but we might be there might be a difference because I'm lighter or my hair is more straight or whatever, those things. And so we kind of discriminate against our own because of the differences that we have. And I wanted you to, because I know you have lots of poems about this, Maddie. And last time we had a guest, Olga, and we talked about this topic because through Hampton Roads Community Foundation, we're currently doing a circle. Which Maddie came to one of our circles as well. She came in as a guest and she read one of her poems. But we've been talking about race, and that's the topic that we're talking about here in Norfolk, Virginia, with Hampton Roads Community Foundation. So we sit in circle, which is an indigenous tradition in reference to, so pretty much everybody's sitting in circle and we discuss a particular topic. The particular topic that we're discussing this year with the foundation is race in Hampton Roads. And so I wanted you, Maddie, to talk a little bit about the fact that, you know, I'm Colombian, so there's Afro-Colombians, there's Dominicans, and there's Afro-Dominicans, or how we might label ourselves Afro-Latinas or Afro-Latinos. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about the Afro influence that Latin America has.
You know, we talk about the diaspora all the time, you know, and how, you know, African Americans were brought to the United States and were enslaved. But, you know, before they got to the United States, they stopped in all of the little islands. So if you think about it, you know, there's African influences everywhere. I do think that, you know, the topic about race, we always say this or mention this, that the way that we view race in our Latin American countries is a little bit different than the way race is viewed here in the United States. And the reason for that is because of that, because we have such a mixture of races. There's Black, there's the indigenous people that were in the islands before they got there. Then we have the African slaves. And then, you know, we were colonized nations, you know, so we were colonized by, you know, white men as well. So there's such a mixture of the cultures. And then I you know, I think we talked a little bit about that when I attended your group. You know, it's like we talk about you know, race and colorism. All these things are still happening, you know. When we talk about slavery, you know, oh yeah, 400 years ago. But when we talk about colorism, especially in Latin America, you know, I always talk about, you know, Trujillo, which was a dictator in the Dominican Republic. And this was maybe 80 years ago. So not even 100 years ago, we had a dictator in the Dominican Republic that killed hundreds of Haitian people just for being Black. So our country is still, you know, kind of learning and evolving from things that have happened not too long ago. So, you know, unfortunately, you know, it's going to take a lot of education. I always say, you know, we have to educate ourselves. We have to research, we have to learn. And I think it's going to, you know, it starts individually, you know, it starts with the individual effort and, you know, educating one another as well. And I think, you know, unfortunately, it's going to take a couple of generations before we can actually see us embrace all that we are, because we're not only one thing. There's a lot, you know, we are mixed with a lot of stuff, and it's gonna take a while before we can see ourselves as what we are and not label ourselves as I am white, I am Black, I'm Indio, I'm Trigueño, whatever. Because if you go like in Dominican Republic, you have 1,000 names to describe the shade of your skin, and it goes combined with your hair type. You know, you're Indio if you're, you know, a little bit brown and your hair is straight. Trigueño if your hair is curly and, you know, your skin is light. If you're a little bit darker, then you're mulata. You know, it's like there's so many names to describe the same thing. We are a mixture of races and, you know, African influences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. You know, I've said this story a couple of times, but my children, their father is Black here from the United States. And so when my kids were born, especially my oldest one, who's 20 years old, I remember, you know, I had to check off the box, right? And I remember like Hispanic or Latino not being up there as an option. And I remember being in my feelings about it, because I felt like I wasn't represented. And I don't remember what I did. I either created my own box or I just didn't answer it at all. But I just think it's that sense of belonging. Like we have to say, and it's human of us, right? To say I belong to that. I know, like for me, if I enter a room of complete strangers and somebody looks Hispanic, I immediately make eye contact with them. Like I want to find out. Like I will gravitate to them, and I just love that our culture, our Hispanic culture, is so rich. And I love to embrace the differences, right? I love the different shades. I love the different shapes. There's a Colombian restaurant that they just opened up recently. I don't know if you've heard of it here. It's called El Fogón, and so it's Colombian, it's Puerto Rican, and it's another country as well, like I think Mexican food. So they sell these food from these three countries, and they're all very authentic. And
Mm-hmm.
I had not experienced a restaurant like that before. Growing up in New Jersey, it's either Colombian, Salvadorian. Like it's rare. You might find a multi country one, but maybe it's based on like Central American countries, but not. But usually specific to that country. So I love the culture. There's actually a lot of things that we have in common versus the things that we don't. And I think we tend to focus on the differences versus the similarities. I know for me growing up, we never discussed shade. But I think it's because majority of the people in my family are my complexion, a little bit darker. But it was I do not recall. I left Colombia when I was about 4, and then my mom and I went to Mexico till I was 9, and I did not experience that probably until I got here to the United States. As we've said before, I have a cousin. Both of their parents are Colombian, and they live here. One is darker than the other one, and she would have jokes about her brother all the time about that he was darker, that maybe he was adopted, or he just looked different than everybody else. But luckily, he embraced it, and it wasn't like a fight. But I think if we could just learn to embrace the differences versus fight about it, and I wanted to ask you too about your experience with hair. You have a lot more experience than I do because, like I said, I didn't grow up hearing the negativity about it. So I wanted you to tell us a little bit about the hair in the Latino community.
Of course, of course. I think everything starts with, again, we were colonized by a white nation, and they came, and they brought their culture, they brought their beliefs, and we were, again, colonized and indoctrinated in a certain way. So, again, the beauty standards were set for white. If you're white, you're beautiful, and your hair has to be straight. So, this is something that we grew up with, or that I grew up with. It was not necessarily talked about that way, but it was the norm. I remember, I think I've told the story many times where, I've had curly hair my entire life, and I never wore my hair curly. The first time that I wore my hair curly, I was 18 years old, or curly on purpose. It was 18 years old. And let me take that back. Not say that I would never wear my hair curly, but my mom used to do rizos. I don't know how you call that, but it was like handmade one by one. She would sit there and twirl each one of my hair. So I had like little curls, but they were perfect curls. So this hairstyle will take an hour probably, because my hair was down to my waist. So she would, do this to my hair, and this was my Sunday hairstyle. While I was growing up, I have so many pictures of my hair like that. But anyway, so
We would love
this was
to
my
see that.
this was my Sunday hairstyle. So, and then as I got older, of course, you will go to the salon. There was a beauty salon everywhere, every corner in DR. That's the one thing that you are going to find. A colmado, grocery store, and a hair salon. And every weekend, people are there straightening their hair. So I only wore my hair down when it was straight. If my hair was not straight, my hair was in a bun, in a ponytail, so there was something about curly hair that's not seen as beautiful, that is not seen as kept, that is, it's called pelo malo, like we call it pelo malo. So when your hair is curly or coarse, it's pelo malo, so it's bad hair. And then when your hair is straight or it's, it's pelo bueno. So everybody wanted to have pelo bueno. So you get that by going to the salon, spending an hour under the dryer, and then straightening your hair. They say that Dominicans blow dryers, they have heat that is illegal because they could burn somebody's scalp, with it. But if that's what it takes to keep your hair straight, for a week or for however long you want to keep it straight, that's what it takes. But yeah, it's that notion of, again, the same thing that we're talking about skin. The darker your skin shade, the uglier you are. So the lighter you are, the more beautiful you are. Same thing with your hair. We were never taught to love our hair. Again, I think with time, I love the evolution of what's happening. I see more and more people embracing their natural hair. As I said, I don't straighten my hair. I maybe straighten my hair twice a year, whatever, to trim the ends and whatever. But I have learned to embrace, my curly hair. I love my curls. And keeping my hair straight is too much work. So
yeah, I would say maybe the closest that I've heard for me is sometimes they might say like, you don't look Latina. And I didn't really know what that meant, but I think it has to do with the region. Like being in New Jersey, like everybody knows, right? Like I could talk, they were like, oh, you're Colombian, right? So they might hear my Colombian accent.
mm-hmm.
But when I first moved to this area, because there wasn't a lot of culture, they might say stuff like, oh, you don't look Hispanic or Latina. One of the things that I love about working with the Hampton Roads Community Foundation, Vivian Oden, when we first met, she said, we just met and she was like, hey, can I just ask you a question? She was like, what's the difference between Latina, Hispanic, Spanish, all that stuff. And I think that having those conversations. Hola, Enrique, huepa. Yeah, he says Enrique. He said hair was a weekend event. That's right.
You see?
Yeah. And Enrique is Puerto Rican.
Metal comb. Oh my God.
Yeah, and that's true. When I lived in New York, like, and even here, like, I do not go to a Dominican salon because when you walk in there, my hair is too thin, so it's like you walk into the smoke and you're like,
Yes.
But I just remember. Do you remember New York? Like it was like $10 to get your hair.
Oh yeah, they had the wash and set for whatever, maybe $25, and if you went from 3 o'clock to whatever, yes, they had all kind of specials. So yeah.
I do like the rolos. The rolos, but I just like my hair is fine just with the rolos, just trying with the rolos, and then I'll just kind of comb it out. I don't need that extra.
I don't know. No. Yeah, no. I have to do the rolos and then you have to straighten it, because if I just do the rolos the next day, I can't even brush my hair.
And see, like, it's like, we're never satisfied. So when I was younger, I had really, really straight hair. So I always I love the Afro look. I love the big hair. When I see little girls like that, or even women, I'm like, dang, like I wish my hair was like that. But definitely, I love the diversity that we bring to community. But yeah, that's the only thing that I've heard in reference to me is they might say you don't look Hispanic. My mom gets that a lot because she has blue eye. No, she has green eyes. When she gets mad, they turn blue. That's why I get confused sometimes. But because she has light eyes, they've maybe said she looks Russian or European sometimes, because we're like the same complexion and we both have freckles. But sometimes it's hard because they, non-Latinos have a stereotype of what Latinos should look like, of what they've seen through media or, in the street. Like I know when I first moved here, it was either, do you speak Mexican or are you Mexican? It was like as if that was the only country that existed. And I think people have become more educated now. So that's good because there is a lot more culture. I think up here in Virginia, about 10% of the population are Latino. So it's definitely growing. Yeah. So I love it.
I think, it's a lack of exposure because, like you said, you were working in New Jersey and in New York, and it's not like here. You might see people walking around the street and talking in Spanish because they think that nobody's gonna understand them because there's really no people that speak Spanish here. In New York, you can't do that because even black people or white people speak Spanish, perfect Spanish. So and again, you can have somebody that looks like your mom walking next to you, and all of a sudden you're like, hola, Blanquita. And then she's like, ¿tiene algún problema conmigo? And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, so you have it's I think it's a lack of exposure, and I think that's what happened, here. I think I always tell the story when I lived in New York, like I know that I have an accent when I speak English, but I just flew under the radar over there because, my English is understandable, quote unquote, most of the time. So, but when I got here, everybody's like, all I had to do was open my mouth, and everybody was like, oh my God, your accent. And it was like so obvious here. And it was like, really? Is it that bad? But it's because you're used to like the variety and the diversity of accents that you have in New York, and everyone has some kind of heavy accent over there. And then over here, it's like a lot of the same. So there's not a lot of variety. So when they hear something a little bit different, it's like, wow. So I think, it's a lack of exposure. But now, because of the internet, because of, online or whatever, if you don't know that Hispanics countries are very diverse, and you can have a white person and the whitest person in the room and the blackest person in the room be from the same place, it's because you're choosing not to pay attention.
Definitely. I know for me, my mother and I might say something in Spanish, but now I have to remind her, like, just be careful because they might not look Hispanic to us, but they might know Spanish because we might be at a basketball game, and we might say something about somebody or a coach or a referee, but I'm like, hey, we have to like really be careful because our population is growing, and there's people that speak Spanish and they don't look like I think that they speak Spanish. Um, but yeah, definitely colorism is something that is still real, is still happening. I have a friend, she lives in I forgot what state she lives in, but she does labor work, construction. And so some of the property owners, they've left 2 or 3 jobs in the last 2 or 3 weeks because of racial comments that they've heard from the people, from the property owners. Comments like, oh, do you know how to do that? And also because she's a female, right? And she's doing construction. So that's also something that, and if you, I didn't know this until recently, but a lot of women, they do an excellent job with like sheetrock and painting, like outstanding, right? And there's actually a group of women here where I live where if they need painters, like they know to go to the females because they do a better job. So I think we're such a diverse country, and we are really diverse in nature, where kind of like survival kicks in. Because if my husband works in construction, I can help in painting. Like, hey, I'm going to do it. You know. Um, so that's a good point, right? So our producer Mark says, everybody loves J Lo and Selena, and the celebrities and Shakira, and like those are well accepted. But even if you look at Shakira, she has a lot of Arabic influence as well, and the Colombian. I know for a while they were comparing Shakira to Beyonce with the hip shaking. Do you remember that? But it's really it goes to show you how similar we are, not how different, but just how similar we are. Yeah. I was just reading some of the comments, so I just want to take this time to say hello to our audience. Enrique, of course. Enrique says doobies were street worthy. That's right. And doobies were everywhere because my mom remembers having doobies because she has really curly hair.
In Dominican Republic, it's called a tubi. not doobie, tubi with
Mhm.
a T. So
Oh,
yes,
Phoebe.
so un tubi, yeah, yeah. Everybody, like my daughter, walks into the hair salon like now. Like she went to the hair salon like 3 weeks ago, and she walked in with her hairnet, and she walks in there, and after she blow dries her hair, the girl has to do a tubi on her, and she puts her little hairnet, and that's how she walks out of the salon. So this is how you walk out of the salon and make your hair last the whole week.
Right. Yeah, and look at Enrique. He's like, I throw people off because he has straight hair, trigueño. What does trigueño mean?
Trigueño, it's like my color, like not too dark, not too light. So
Mhm. He has hazel eyes, freckles. So they're like, dang, where is he from? And then he can articulate really well in Spanish and English, you know? So I'm sure that was, and
that's
you
a
were
very
like,
Puerto Rican phrase. ¿De a dónde rayo vengo yo? Yes.
oh my God, I love it. So tell me a little bit about, and I know you've talked about this before, but I wanted you to reemphasize the importance of educating people in your household about it so that they, when they go out into the world, your children know how to express themselves about their culture, about their
Correct.
race.
Correct. It's, again, just like I said before, everything starts with yourself, because I think a lot of the times, when we don't accept who we are, how can you ask somebody to accept you for who you are when you don't accept yourself? We have to look in the mirror and we have to recognize ourselves first, So like I said, it took me 18 years to finally fall in love with my hair, and to grow into myself, because I grew up with my mom and my dad, and my mom was very light skinned. My mom looked almost Asian, because she was like very light, and she had a chinky eyes, and like the shape of her face or whatever. Her hair was very thin. It was curly, but it was very thin, so it was very easy, kind of like you said, Viviana, like your hair is very fine, so it's very easy to straighten your hair. So not like mine, even when it's short, it does take me, 45 minutes to straighten my hair. So my mom was like, 10 minutes and she's done. So me and her were the only females in the house. So I grew up comparing myself to her, and I look nothing like my mom. So like physically, we, didn't have same body, did not have the same body type. My mom was a size 6, 7, and I was a size 10, so never could wear the same shoes. She was, tiny and petite, and I was not tiny and petite. So, I was curvy. So it was so hard. And then she was so white. I was a lot darker than her. Again, my hair was so curly and hard to manage. So it took me a long time. I was probably like 14, 15 before I started like really being able to handle my hair, because my hair was long. I've always like I cut my hair for the first time probably when I was in my 30s, but my hair was always down to my waist. So I always had a lot of hair, curly hair, hard to manage hair. And it took a long time to kind of be able to manage my hair. So again, we're so culturally diverse, and everybody looks so different within the same household, that it is very important to speak about that. I always talk about, my personal case, with my children. My husband is it's light skinned with a green eyes, and then I'm a little bit on the darker side with a curly hair, and then my daughter is white with hazel eyes, curly hair, and then I have two boys that are black. They're very black. So and my children don't even look related. They don't even look like cousins, like nothing. There's nothing. Like you look at my twins on my daughter, and it's like you try to look, maybe their eyes, maybe their nose, maybe nothing, not even their nothing, not their ears. They look nothing alike, and they have the same mom and the same dad. So it's always very important to speak about race. You don't want to talk about it, but this is who we are. We can look different, different shapes, different sizes, different hair, and we can still be related. But again, it goes back to how you are raised here. We hear everything, every conversation brings up race. In the Dominican Republic, we don't talk about race, or in I would say Hispanic countries, we talk about ethnicity. Not we don't talk about ethnic. We talk about nationality. That's kind of what we talk about and what we pride ourselves on. Like you said, you're talking, and the minute you talk, oh, you're Colombian. The minute I talk, I probably know that you can tell that I'm Dominican. So that's those are the cues that we look to instead of how you look, because my auntie looks like you. So if my aunt doesn't say a word, she could say she's Colombian, but the minute she talks, then she's Dominican. Um, so yeah, I think it's important to have those conversations at home, to educate our children, to have them, it's from a very young age. I think it's important to teach our children a sense of pride in who they are, in what they look like. I think, a big part, like Mark said before, all Hispanics don't look like J Lo and Shakira. Yeah, but that's the only thing that is out there. That's what is well known. So I think, nowadays, they're doing a little bit of a better job, getting different shades out there, and people coming out, and big ups to Amara La Negra. She was in Love and Hip Hop, and she caused a whole chaos. I don't know if I don't watch the show, but I did watch her videos, where she had a little thing with one of the producers, because the guy was like, well, if I'm going to produce you, you're going to have to straighten your hair and get rid of your afro, and she's like, nope, I'm Black, and I'm proud, and I'm Hispanic, and I'm Dominican, and I am going to look like this, and I'm going to sing in English, and I'm going to sing in Spanish too. And it was like, she was proud of who she was. But again, it took her a long time to get there. And it's about representation. We need to start at home, teaching our kids that they're beautiful, that different shades, doesn't make you less than the other. Educate ourselves so that when we go out there into the community, we can, talk about ourselves and be proud of who we are, so other people are proud of us too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we kind of in my household, of course, the language, because my grandmother's around, my mom's around, I'm around, so they hear Spanish all the time. So I think it's just embracing the language, and making it acceptable, that it's okay that we speak Spanish. I think that part. I think the food is big, to make sure that they continue to taste, and that we cook Colombian for my household. The music. I tell the story all the time. Like, as soon as my 20-year-old got his own car, he immediately went to get a Colombian flag, and that's what he has on his rearview mirror. And he has a Colombian flag in his bedroom, and my youngest one does as well. And they have really embraced it. But I think what also helps is that dad embraces it as well. So I think that's important to make sure that you guys are on the same page as you're giving information to your children, and so that when they come out into this world, they're able to just embrace it and maybe educate people on it. Like, for my youngest son, he's the darkest between my oldest, and my oldest looks a lot like me, and my youngest, he's a lot darker than my oldest son and me. And so his friends are intrigued to see what his parents look like, because they know dad, because dad is loud at the basketball games, but I'm not. So just recently, a teacher said, she was like, oh, we were at a food distribution, and some of the kids were volunteering. They were like, oh, Miss Viviana, take a picture, because they want to know what Joel's mom looks like. And I think it's that intrigueness, right? Because Joel looks a certain way, and they know that he's half Colombian. And I don't think they say half Latin. I think they really specify saying that they're half Colombian. So I just love that. I love that we can, I call it brainwash our children to the culture. I remember, this is probably bad, but when my youngest, because I'll blame it on the fact that I was a new mom, but when Troy was young, like 6 or 7, I was like, Troy, your wife, she's gonna speak Spanish, okay? He'd be like, okay. Because in my mind, like I wanted him to be attracted to, a Latina woman. But I stopped at some point. But that's what I did as a new mom. But I love that we can really educate our kids, our children, to embrace the culture and to embrace other cultures.
Mhm.
And I think the biggest way that we could do it is through food, to be honest with you. Through even watching television shows, like I know there's some comedy shows with I forgot the name of the show, but it shows an Asian family and how they engage with one another in a funny way. So even stuff like that, I think it's important. I remember when my oldest son was younger, he was a baby. We would watch some type of baby videos, but in New Jersey, we would get a free Chinese channel. So sometimes I would just let it run because I thought that maybe by him listening to it, he would absorb it in some capacity. So I've always loved diversity. I'm all about trying new things, whether it's food or new experiences or going to new places. I think it's important. And I think that's part of embracing the differences, through those activities. And I think as well, sometimes I think community or the world that we live in here in the United States, we kind of have been for certain organizations, whether it's through the business world or in the academic realm, they have been forced to implement certain things to create inclusion for the students, to create a sense of belonging, because it does exist. And even one of the cities near where I live, they have a welcome center for English learners. So
Mhm.
it's targeting Latinos, for example, but it's a welcome center where any new families that are coming to that city have a place where they can be in reference to academics. And I just think that getting creative, and I hope that many cities are a little bit more proactive instead of waiting till it actually like hits the city and there's like, oh my God, there's 8,000 people.
Mhm.
But just being on the know of what's coming. I know a lot of cities have meetings and they're forecasting what's going to happen in the next 5 or 10 years, and I really hope that one of those topics is culture. As you guys know, this is my moment. Latinos contribute 3 point. I think we're at 3.5 now.
5 or 7? I thought it was 3.7.
And
Yes,
yes,
you said 3.7 last week.
yes. So we contribute $3.7 trillion to the U.S. economy. Latinos do. And of course, that's some of my money, some of Maddie's money, my mom's fund money. Um, so we are definitely contributing on a financial aspect. Just the roles that we have in the military, in the business world, just the professionals. I know, Maddie, I don't know if you can talk a little bit about the things that we don't generally see. I know back in the day, people would just think that Latinos did housekeeping and construction. But I know these last 6 months, I have seen a flood of entrepreneurship, just a flood of it. I don't know if you've seen it maybe on your end, like opening business accounts for Latinos or just new people that are coming to the country. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, that's the beauty of the United States. That's why they say, the American dream. That's why they say, because here it's easier to try new things without breaking the bank, without going broke, having opportunities, opening doors. And I think, again, if we educate ourselves, when we get here, we have it opens doors and we can have a lot of opportunities to try different things. So as far as the business world, everywhere, like you look everywhere, like sometimes, you look at basketball, like I don't follow college basketball, but it was a big deal, for March Madness. There were like, I don't know, 10 schools that had their star athletes were Dominican. And I was like, what? And yes, and it was like, one of the kids that made it to the top 16, I remember when the game finished, like he literally went up to the stands and he hugged his mom. And all you could hear is his mom was like, Dios te bendiga, mijo, tú te lo mereces. Like you could hear her, like you could see her mouth moving and, blessing him and talking to him in Spanish. So that was like a big surprise to me. I was like, okay, yes, we're in college too. Our kids are in college, and they are star athletes. When was it last year? Al Harford, he is Dominican, and he's married to the first Dominican Miss Universe, and he is an he is an NBA star. So we are everywhere. From lawyers and judges, to police officers, to like I said, NBA stars, like there's a lot of Hispanics names in the NFL too. And it's like, what? And even on TV, there's actually the girl that play the live action version of Snow White. She's Colombian. I saw an interview of her, and she was like, I guess you guys have a soda that's like an apple flavor or something like that.
Colombiano. It's called Colombiano.
Okay, yeah, she was talking. She's like, of course I drink my Colombiana. I go to this spot in New Jersey, and I was like, look at that. I didn't think she was Hispanic because, again, she don't look Hispanic, and she is, So, you see, we don't know anymore, and that's why it's important, and I think, that makes a difference too, when people are proud of their roots and where they come from, and when they can get to places and they can highlight that, that not only inspires, but it sets an example for the upcoming generation. That's why I say, we should never be afraid to talk about us, to again, like we were saying, preparing our kids, so when they go out there, they can educate, they can be eloquent enough to express themselves and be proud of who they are. So that is important, because representation does matter. I tell my kids all the time, especially my boys, it's like, whenever oh, what's your name, and I tell them, you have to pronounce your name the right way. You can't say Garcia. Your name is not Garcia, your name is Garcia. So you got to make sure that you say Garcia. And, that's the one thing they do, because I tell them all the time, my daughter will get married one day and she will change her last name, but you guys will be Garcia forever. So it's important that, that you are proud of that.
Yes, I love that. And I think even just using examples within your family, right? So like example for me, and I'll give her a shout out to one of my cousins. She's Dominican. She's my adopted cousin. She's an anesthesiologist. I have a cousin. She works for a big time IT company out of Florida. I have a cousin that works for Dell, doing, computer stuff. I mean, just, I'm an entrepreneur, stuff like that. So I think just looking within your family itself, and I think it's that, right? Like when we have, like when you guys did a family reunion, like the need to have family reunions so we could know what people are doing, and we have kind of lost that, right? I was talking to a friend today, and he was saying how they're going to have a family reunion because like he knows his cousins, he knows his aunts, uncles, but the younger generations may not know their cousins. So I think we've lost some of that. And so I think this is a good opportunity to take it back, to bring it back, to be able to connect and find out what people are doing. Because if I knew my cousin works for Delta and I could be flying for free or discounted, why not? So I'm losing out on discounts. But just kind of knowing, just kind of staying connected. I know my family in Colombia, we have a WhatsApp group. I know the Latino community uses WhatsApp a lot. So we have a WhatsApp group, and that's where sometimes it's like chisme or whatever, or sometimes they have these long
memes,
religious videos that are like 21 minutes. But I think it's still good because we're able to stay connected with the older people, some of the younger people. Usually there's mainly like the females are in the groups, but when I see something really good, then I'll individually send it to my male cousins. but I think we have to celebrate these things.
Mhm,
I just think that our generation, we have so much content because of social media
mhm,
versus back in the day where we just had the black and white pictures or
mhm.
a little thing you had to look through to see the picture.
Yeah.
Uh, so I just think we have so much to look back at, but then we're not going to be able to recognize, oh, that's my cousin Maddie, because we just
Mhm.
never met each other.
Correct,
Mm.
correct. Yes, that's why, especially like for me, like you said, for me, I'm the oldest granddaughter, so I got to spend time with all my aunts and uncles. We've had three of them. Three of the siblings have passed away, one being my mom and, two of her sisters. And I was blessed to have been able to have great relationships with all of them. And I know them personally and spend time with them, and I know the younger generation, like you said, not necessarily experienced them the same way. And even me, because now, I was like, the oldest, but I was the niece, and now it's like I'm one of the older cousins, so like you were saying, looking within your family, like I've been talking about, maybe joining the military for one of my sons, and it's like, don't just settle for the Navy because we live, in a town that's, in a state that's predominantly Navy. There's a little bit of everything. And within my family, like my cousins, the younger cousins, I have one in the Navy, I have one in the Air Force, I have one in the Army, I have, like there's one in the Marines. So they're everywhere. So I'm like, okay, if you have a question, you call this one. If you have the question about this one, you call that one. Then you call this one and you call that one, and all the resources are right there in people that they know, that they could see themselves reflected on. So again, it's important for us to know who we are and to try to keep that connection. And I know it keeps getting harder because, again, social media, if you think about it, we don't really pick up the phone and call anymore. We text everybody, and it's harder to get somebody on the phone and have a conversation on the phone, and I'm guilty of it too, but so imagine if I'm guilty of that, imagine the younger generation too. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's harder for us to pick up the phone, but I've thought about just putting a reminder on my phone to call the older people. My
mhm,
grandmother, definitely, I talk to her all the time, but just her siblings, I need to do a better job just calling them because it's
mhm,
so much easier to text, but they really want to hear that phone call,
mhm.
and they just
It's
love.
your time. It's time. You're giving them your time, and that is precious. When you give somebody your time, it's because you care about them. So for them to feel that you're giving them your time.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Yeah. Because I always say, so it's my grandmother who she'll be 90 this year, and then my mom, and then myself, and then my children. But I see how I'm going to be my grandmother one day, and I'm going to want
Mhm,
to get those phone calls. But
mhm,
maybe I'll still be texting when I'm 90, but I won't be able to do whatever AI is doing, when my great grandchildren are, doing something else with their cell phones or their watches or their airplane or whatever method of transportation they'll be using at that time.
It's so hilarious that you're saying that, because this morning my dad asked me, when are you going to help me fill out this form? And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, when I get to his age, what's going to be the handicap for me? You know what I'm saying? And you're talking about, maybe I don't know how to use the phone in that time or so. Like I'm trying to think, okay, if I'm going to be able to fill out my own forms back,
You
then
won't.
what is it that I'm not going to be able to do, So, it's hilarious that you've said
Yeah,
that.
because I think we take it for granted, we take it for granted. But just the method of transportation, I think that's big for senior citizens, right? So you become there has to be a point where you are no longer able to transport yourself, and so I think that's the biggest thing that changes your life. Like today's world, you lose your license or you lose your vehicle, and then you're gonna have to
Mhm.
depend on someone because either you can't see or you're just not allowed to. But at some point, that's why I say I only have two sons. I'm gonna be like the best mother-in-law ever, ever. So I want to make sure I have four children instead of just two. Um, so, but yeah, I just think that we have to be intentional about the things that we do and just embrace it as it comes, you know, because it's gonna come. And I see it because I'm living it. I see my mother and I see my grandmother.
Listen, and I keep talking about people dying, like when you're young, you don't feel it as much, but now it's like the people that are dying, and it's like, the cousins and the uncles and the aunts and, my mom's best friend and, and it's like people that are close to you and you're like, oh my God, oh my God. And then, you look down and you're like, oh, my mom is gone. So that means I'm next, like I'm my mom now, and then now I'm the grandma. And it's like, oh my God, So yeah, it's hitting home now. I was telling my friend, it sucks getting old because, we keep losing, people that, my age that are closer to us in age. And it's like, but it beats the other options. So I'm glad I'm getting old.
Yes, definitely, definitely. Yes. So our time is up. This was a great conversation. I enjoyed it. Lily Matos made she said correcto, un poquito de tiempo. She was saying that's what people want. Cuando tú seas viejita vas a tener este sentimiento de gratitud. Yeah, that's true. I'm already trying to practice it now. So, and I tell all my students, I'm gonna call you guys. I'm gonna need a ride to my doctor's appointment. So be ready. Don't forget that I tutored you when you were in third grade. So we're ready for your poem, Maddie. I can't wait to hear it. I'm ready. We're all ready for the poem of the week because you weren't here last week, right?
Last week, no, I was I? I
No, you
can't
weren't
even
here.
remember.
So we've missed you. We haven't had a live one, I think.
I know I've been out for a couple of weeks, but so this is gonna be another repeat, but it's in my heart, and I think it goes a little bit with what we're talking about today. And it's not I shared it not too long ago, but yeah, it's in my heart, like I said, and I want to share it. So it's called Se Habla Español. So for years, I carried shame between my teeth. The daughter of immigrants who never really learned to speak English, the enemy I learned to keep close, a jack in the box that would surprise me whenever it would come out. I, the clown. In my head, the words made perfect sense, but then my thoughts would hit my tongue, my lips, the words doing backflips, a reminder que aquí se habla español. Like I would never earn my place. Born in the land of the free, but to Trump lovers, I will always be an other for being the daughter of foreigners. My Spanish will always be a safe space. But English loves to keep me caged, never freely accepted, the weight of the world reflected on how heavy it gets when I speak it. That instead of making an effort to understand me, all you hear is aquí se habla español. That 49 years later, I'm still trying to convince my tongue that we are enough, that our stories deserve to roam every single space that we occupy, that our songs are not only about the words, but more about the heart injected in the movements and into each one of the music notes. Like Shakira dancing champeta at the Super Bowl halftime show, or Bad Bunny's revolutionary album, Debí tirar más fotos de cuando te tuve. Aquí siempre se va a hablar español. Los ancestros, la guía, este acento, herencia, bravía de quienes fuimos y de quien soy. And for everyone that cringes whenever you hear my accent, you are correct. Aquí se habla español.
Thank you. I love that. Thank you, Maddie, so much. That was amazing. That's a chill one as well.
Thank you.
On that one as well. But yeah, I love the topic that we had today. Next week, we're going to have a guest. So stay tuned. It's going to be a very exciting topic. But I hope that everyone has an amazing week. And just remember that we are here every Sunday at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Myself, Viviana, Maddie Garcia, and Nicte Cuevas, all the way from Hawaii. And I think she'll join us next week, if I'm not mistaken.
A good week on purpose. You forgot to say on purpose.
Yes, like our friend Tangi says, have a good week or on purpose, right? Have a a great week on purpose. And don't forget your goals. We're mid-April. So just make sure that you check in with your goals, readjust them, look at them. Don't be scared of them. Turn the page, start on a free start with a fresh start of paper. That's fine. If you need to recalibrate, we're okay with that. Thank you, Mark. And I hope you have an amazing week. And I will see you guys next Sunday, 4:00 Eastern Standard Time. Gracias.
Whether you're a seasoned designer, dabbler, or just starting out, this course is for you.
If you're watching this with your friends, you'll probably make a joke.
Because you know what you feel on the inside
isn't what you want people to know.
If you have to pretend to be happy,
find someone you trust and tell them.
If you get mad at things and you don't know why, or have thoughts about hurting yourself,
find someone you trust and tell them.
You are never alone when you share.
Seriously, people care about you.
It's okay to not understand what you're feeling.
And it's easy to think that you're all alone.
But you don't have to be.
You're never alone when you share.
Don't be ashamed to tell someone you trust what you're feeling.
You're not alone.
You are not alone.
Find someone you trust and tell them.
Tell a parent.
Tell a teacher. Tell a brother or sister.
Or just tell a friend.
You haven't done anything wrong.
Talk to someone.
Talk to someone.
It's how things get better.
Are just so impressed with them. Like I said, we've been with them for years. I will recommend and refer anyone to them. We stand by A+ academics. They're the best.
A+ tutorial really did help me with all my grades. They all went up when I came to this place. And I would say I recommend this school to everyone.
So it's a really good environment to be in, especially for me because it makes me look up to my parents.
If you have students that need academic help, A+ Academics is the place to be.
A+ Academics, what a great place to go for academics.
It's just a really great place to learn.